So today we actually have a panelist. Misa Lopez is the Intimate Partner Violence Assistance Program Coordinator at Jesse Brown VA. What we're going to discuss today is Domestic Violence Awareness Month and the White Ribbon Initiative. How are you doing, Misa?
I'm doing well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me and giving us this opportunity to discuss this issue.
Oh, great. Yes. And it looks like there's so many different issues that are surrounding this. We know that the conflicts that arise sometimes in military families are due to a host of different things. Mental illness, drugs and alcohol abuse may be involved, PTSD, traumatic brain injuries, multiple deployments, family separations and reintegration, and poor moral character sometimes on the part of a person that would perpetrate violence on another person. So why don't you give us an overview of what this whole topic is about? I know you are very deeply involved in that.
Something I'm really passionate about. So there's a lot of content to cover. So I feel like we can probably start with defining what intimate partner violence is, or domestic violence. I feel like in the community, intimate partner violence and domestic violence are kind of used interchangeably. There are nuanced differences in terms of who is enacting the violence. So for our purposes, we focus on intimate partner violence. And how that's defined is it describes any violent behavior, including but not limited to any kind of physical or sexual violence, stalking, psychological aggression, including coercive acts, by a current or former intimate partner. And it generally occurs on a continuum of frequency and severity, and it can range in from one episode that might or might not have lasting impacts to chronic and severe episodes over a period of years. It's also important to know that IPV is non-discriminatory, so it can occur in heterosexual relationships, same-sex relationships, any race, any socioeconomic status, and to be identified as IPV, it does not require sexual intimacy or cohabitation.
Oh, boy, yes, because, and one of the things about it is that it is not a normal byproduct of military life. It's really a crime, right? So it's been defined as a crime. You have the 1996 Lutenberg Amendment to the Federal Gun Control Act of 1968, and it makes it a felony, right, for someone, for anyone convicted of a domestic violence misdemeanor. So this actually has implications for whether someone can actually be discharged, unconditional dismissal from the military as well, right?
Right, and it's important to point out that statistically, if we want to think about volume, statistically speaking, 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men experience IPV. And there's research that indicates that veterans may have a higher prevalence and possibly double that of the general population. So this is a very important issue for us to address.
Oh, boy. And there are so many different things, signs of abuse, right? I mean, people in the medical profession, because I'm a physician as well, but, looking towards the skin, the bone, and the central nervous system, you have wounds and bruises, sometimes and fractures or dislocated joints that result from this physical violence, but also the mental aspects of it. People can actually have malnutrition or poor hygiene or, or defensive wounds that you'll see on their skin, and, insomnia, low self-esteem. And then there's a kind of an air of silence when a predator, is present with the victim. So, how do people really face this, and how can they address the issue if they are going through domestic violence themselves? What do you offer, like at the VA?
Well, so I'm wondering if I could just give a little context with 2 components of intimate partner violence, because I think it's important to have a better understanding of someone who's experiencing it and the challenges that come with that, and someone who knows someone who may experience it. So when we think about someone who's experiencing IPV, because you brought up the piece about there can be, aside from the physical representations, there can be some emotional and psychological representations. And so, in my opinion, I think one of the more offensive and damaging myths around IPV is, why does she stay, or why does he stay, or it must be okay, right? So, part of what's important to us to convey is it's not okay. And as much as we understand that it takes an enormous amount of courage to leave, I would argue that it takes an enormous amount of strength and courage to stay, right? So if you have children, or you have no money or no support system, in these relationships, oftentimes you've been isolated from friends and family and community, and you've been made to believe that everything you have is because of your partner, and you're too worthless to get anything anywhere else, right? So, having an understanding, on the advocate side, that it takes all the courage someone can muster to get through the day, to make your kids lunch, to go to work and act like everything's all right, despite the uncertainty and the terror, and constantly wondering if today's going to be a good day or is it going to be a bad day, right? It's totally unpredictable. And so I just, I like to point out that it takes a massive amount of strength and courage. So what we want people to know is there's help. There are VA providers, community agencies, advocates, resources that can help give people a better understanding of what's available to you and how to access those services, and perhaps help move you towards safety. And I'm a huge believer that knowledge is power, right? So sometimes knowing you're not alone can feel very empowering and give us hope. So when you're ready to take that step, you know that someone's going to be there to walk alongside of you. So we're not asking people to make the hard decisions right this minute, right? Leaving an unsafe relationship can be one of the most dangerous times for someone. So we want to be sure to safety plan and to have resources in place. But what I would propose is for people to consider, what would it be like to feel safe? And if the answer is maybe better, then we want folks to know that we're here for them. A second piece that kind of ties into is those of us who may not be experiencing violence, but who know someone who does.
Ah, yes.
Yeah, and this is something that, I try to make sure I'm incorporating and talking a lot about, because we focus a lot on the individual who's experiencing to make sure that they're safe and getting them the supports that they need. But, I also acknowledge that for those of us who may not have the understanding fully of what IPV is and all the implications, we may not know what to do. So, when we talk about if you're in an unhealthy or unsafe situation, I do think there's merit in discussing what to do if you know someone who's in a dangerous or unhealthy relationship. Because I think this can be really confusing for folks, right? Like friends, family, neighbors, coworkers. I think that when we suspect something's going on with someone that we care about, we might hesitate to ask questions, because I think, we often look at domestic violence like a private family matter, or we don't want to pry, or we don't want to be intrusive. But for those of us who may know somebody or may see something, I want you to consider, what would it be like if we asked someone, are you okay?
Yes.
And what if we were the first person to ask that question? And what if that person felt safe enough or scared enough to tell someone, right? Like, could we be the difference in letting that person know that you're not alone? And could we be the first person to let them know, that what's happening is not okay and they don't, they deserve to be safe? So I think educating ourselves about the issue, itself, but then what to do, right?
Yes. And it's really interesting because you were giving a statistic about 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men. And so that means if you're in a unit, if you're in the military, if you're active duty, it means someone in your unit probably is going through this that you're not even aware of, that needs to be brought to the command level where people, have some type of insight into what's happening with their troops. And,
absolutely.
And also, this it seems like it's a continuum too. So sometimes I've seen the reports where people said, well, I felt too embarrassed to talk about this, or no big deal, or they were trying to protect someone's career, their spouse's career, or the partner's career. So it seems like early intervention is really important. So, before this progresses, don't assume that this is going to be the height of everything. If someone says something bad to you, that maybe this is part of the progression, right?
Right. And, you bring up a really good point about the telling, right? Yeah. So we have to also remember in intimate partner violent relationships, there's a lot of emotional and psychological battering. And particularly, with folks who are, have this persona of being super tough and, in these really hardcore environments, we need to believe that there's some conditioning that goes on, right? That, you better not tell, or conditioning someone to believe that whatever's going on is their fault. Yes. Or that they're worthless and they deserve whatever they're experiencing. So, when we think about those things, it makes sense that someone in that situation is reluctant to tell, because I feel like there's a lot of shame and self-blame that comes along with it, in addition to, like, confusion over what just happened or what's deserved.
Yes. That's an interesting point. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Mm-hmm. I think, this may sound oversimplified.
Right.
But I think we have to really understand the power of the words, "you're not alone." And if we remember that it takes time to be able to be at a place where we feel safe to tell someone, or, if that it just takes some time to, even sometimes for ourselves to understand what's happening to us, we need to know, the people who are kind of observing all this, we need to remember that it takes time, right? And it may take time to disclose or may take time to leave. And I think our instinct is, because I like to believe that we're innately good, right? That our instinct is we want to protect people. And we care so much that if somebody's not ready to tell or leave or move in a different direction, we may interact with them with judgment and say, why not, or why don't you do something, right? So we're now kind of putting the onus on the person who's experiencing. So we really want to make every effort to be supportive without judgment, and at the end of the day, let that person know that although you may not be ready right now, I'm here, and I'm going to be here, and when you're ready, I'm going to support you.
Fantastic. Yeah, that's excellent advice. And, anyone out there who's listening, I hope you're listening to these words and take the step forward as was just mentioned, and also, being compassionate about other people who are going through this and understanding, how important it is. But, tell me something also about the White Ribbon Initiative.
Yes, we are. I'm really excited about this. So, so as you had mentioned at the beginning, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And during this month, our goal is to increase awareness of domestic violence, and we do that through advocacy, education, events. But most importantly, the root of Domestic Violence Awareness Month is for those experiencing violence. We want to let you know that we're here for you, and if you need help or support or want more information about the options you have, we're here to help. And so we're doing this in a few ways. First, which is very exciting that we've brought it here to Jesse Brown, they're in a national effort to take action against violence. The VA's launched the White Ribbon VA campaign. And so this campaign aims to eliminate sexual harassment, sexual assault, and domestic violence in VA healthcare settings and in our communities, and also to promote a positive change in the culture that would allow actions from the personal pledge to become the norm. And so essentially the initiative encourages everyone to make the pledge to never commit, excuse, or stay silent about sexual harassment, sexual assault, or domestic violence, and to lead by example through our thoughts, words, and actions. So through the month of October, we wear a white ribbon to represent that we take the pledge to stand against violence, and we support VA healthcare settings as safe and welcoming environments. So if somebody wanted to learn a little bit more, get a little bit more detail about the White Ribbon campaign, they can visit www.va.gov/health/harassment/free, or they can find us on social media at #HarassmentFreeVA.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And if someone is experiencing domestic violence, there's a national domestic violence hotline, right?
Yes.
That they can call?
Yes. And so the most important number for anybody to have, whether you know someone or are in that experience yourself, and there's a number of safe ways to keep that number secret if you need to. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is 800-799-SAFE. So that's 800-799-7233. And they can help with safety planning, resources, support. They're 24/7, so it's a really good resource.
Okay. Yeah, we're almost very running out of time, but you were phenomenal host, so we're actually going to bring you back at some point. But, give me some cover, what you want us to know in the last minute.
So I do think it's important to know that the VA has an intimate partner violence assistance program, and that's where I come in. I'm the coordinator of the program. And because the VA IPV program recognizes that intimate partner violence is serious yet preventable, right, and disproportionately can affect veterans. So some of the ways that we intervene with veterans is we build community partnerships between the VA and community programs because we want to increase respective awareness and expertise, especially with our population, and to better understand the intersections between agencies and address veteran-specific needs.